Hi, everyone. This is Trish Kendall with Choose and Become. I am very much looking forward to diving into today's episode with my guest, Bill Niemi. Bill, before we dive in with you, I just want to take a step back before we move forward for those people that are new to this interview series. I made 5 critical choices on my journey from the pit of despair to the peak of success. And each of those choices prepared me for the most important one, which was my 5th choice to embrace my boundless capacity to give love and to receive love. On this interview series, I get the opportunity to spend time with people who I admire and share their lessons, their wisdom, their experiences with all of you. So Bill and I connected, and I purposely, Bill, introduced the 5 choices with the 5th choice because of the connection between you and I and our belief around the most important choice. Before we dive in there, I just want to say welcome, Bill, to the Choose and Become podcast. Thanks for being here today.
Well, thank you, Trish. It's a great opportunity to spend some time with you. And this is one of my early experiences in the podcasting world, so bear with me.
Yeah. And you know what? You actually said it. It's a great opportunity for you and I to spend time together. And that's been one of the gifts of hosting this series is I get to spend time with people who I learn from and agree with. We have the same philosophies and I learn from and I learn different perspectives. So I appreciate that. All right. Before we dive in, will you share a little bit about yourself for my audience, for the people that have not met you yet?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So my story is a long journey, just because of the season of life I'm in. So I won't give you the 7 decades full of it. However, so I'm originally I grew up in Michigan in the Midwest in Detroit. That was my early life, living in a place where the Motor City was originated. My father was one of the folks working in that space in the environment. My dad was a blue collar worker. He was a World War II vet, and met my mom after the war. He was in the service with my mother's brother. So World War II is very faithful to my life because of that. They got married. My dad's name was John. He went by Jack. My mom's name was Dorothy. She went by Jane. And like many post-World War II families, they discovered having children. And so the baby boom began. So I was part of the baby boom experience. So I learned a lot of lessons in my early life. Lived in somewhat, for me, it was a chaotic environment, but for most, maybe it was like a perfect life growing up, right? I had, my mom was at home taking care of us all the time. My dad, fortunately and unfortunately, was working all the time to support a family of 7 on blue collar wages. And then another very important person in my life was my grandmother. Her name was Dolores. Because my mom, worked so hard to take care of the kids, and my dad was always working, my grandmother became sort of the rescuer in our family, the person that provided this space of unconditional love. So I learned 2 things from her. The unconditional love piece was most important, but she was kind of a rescuer to our family situation. So we get to spend weekends with my grandmother, which was really great. And I learned just this amazing, this whole love journey for me started there, because in the space with my grandmother, she was a devout Catholic. She was just this amazing person. She prayed for people all the time. It was so much fun going to church with her on Sundays, but just watching how she was able to manage love in the space of, this difficult space for my mom and my family and my dad. On the other hand, the other side of my life was my mom at home struggling to manage, these 5 kids, and 4 boys and 1 girl, by the way, which was not easy.
Oh my gosh.
for a lady who was handicapped and pretty much housebound. And so she had a lot of stress, and she managed it. I mean, it's a 24/7 job, as you know, being a mom. But what happened was she would get, she'd kind of lose her cool. And when she lost her cool a number of times, being frustrated, she'd threaten to leave us. And I was, a very young kid, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. And I didn't realize at the time, but that scared me greatly. And so throughout my life journey, that became this complicated dichotomy of the unconditional love on one hand and this person who threatened to leave me. So I learned later in my life that the way I learned to protect myself actually was to the only thing I had was love for my mom. So I chose to withdraw the love for her when she would scare me and threaten to leave. And that became the subconscious thing that I carried up into my early 30s. Um, Ended up marrying my first wife, who we were like 19 and 20, way too young. We weren't ready to get married. I realized now that I was rescuing her from a very difficult situation, so I became the rescuer early on. I learned the rescuing piece really from kind of watching my father, work so hard as an amazing human being. He was really gifted. He was highly intelligent, had an IQ of about 165, but could never, use the brain power that he had to build a business and to create a secure family. So he was forced to manage the family with wages, doing 2 and 3 jobs. So I always felt, sort of bad for my father, and I wanted to. I just kind of planted the seed that I needed to help other people, not end up. It was a great life, but not be stuck in that place where they couldn't really fulfill all their dreams. So I became sort of the rescuer. So that was embedded in my psyche, protecting myself with withdrawing love. Married this first lady. She left me. Oh my goodness, love again. It's escaping. I love this lady, and I didn't. Actually, interesting part of that piece is I assumed actually when people got married that it was like, you made the decision to get married and you stayed married for life. What I didn't realize is it takes 2 people to get married and only one to choose not to be married.
Hmm.
So that was kind of a shock as a guy in the young 20s. So fortunately, I met what became the love of my life, Beth, on a blind date in the 70s in Detroit. It clearly was love at first sight. It was just that magical moment. We were at a Red Wings hockey game, the first and only hockey game we ever went to. And I just knew in that moment, I actually felt this like person who just accepted me unconditionally and had this compassion and this nurturing ability. And of course, was a beautiful lady as well, which always helps. So from there, we got married shortly thereafter, moved to California because that's where Beth grew up. And who would want to grow up in Michigan when you could come to California, right?
Yeah.
So we
Which
had our
is where
first.
you still are.
Still are. Still the
Yeah.
same town, Sacramento. Yeah, 47 years later. And I love Michigan, but I tell people it is a great place to be from. So we had our first daughter, and all of a sudden, about a year into that, I started to experience some melancholy and then depression, and then just really struggling. It turned into a health issue, developed an autoimmune disease. I was scared, I was desperate, and I didn't know what was going on with me. Suicidal thoughts and things like that. So as a young, early 30s, I realized I needed to get some help. So for me, counseling was not something I ever imagined, just like I'd ever
Mm-hmm.
imagined not being married to the same person. But I was desperate for finding my path forward. In counseling, actually, what I learned, and I actually learned it in not only just one-to-one counseling, but it was group therapy, which is also something I probably would have never imagined doing. But when you need to get help, you do what you need to do. And I discovered during that time in a group meditation practice that I actually learned about this love thing that I had with my mother, and that I was, as a defense mechanism, would withdraw love. And the most amazing thing happened to me in that session, and that was the counselor asked me, what did I want to do? And he said, do you want to forgive your mother? I just, in that moment, chose to just forgive her, to release it. And the release was amazing. And it literally was this cloud lifted from my heart and my head and my soul. I forgave her. I ultimately, I had a bonding conversation with her because she didn't even know that was going on, right? But so the depression went away, the health came back, and Beth just stood there by my side as an amazingly loving, nurturing human being, saying, "Bill, go figure it out." And so that was many years ago. And so I moved forward into my career, but I spent the career, I became an accountant originally, not really liking accounting. That wasn't my thing, but I loved real estate. But what I really loved is fixing companies and turning around companies. And this was my rescuer in play. So I would go around and I became a turnaround consultant for about 3 decades, fixing companies. And it was pretty stressful. It was pretty agonizing. So at home, I had the love and compassion of Beth, and then we had our 2 daughters, Holly and Kelly. And at work, I was this fixing guy, and that's at the time I didn't really discover my saboteurs, but I did later in my career when I became a Vistage Chair. But I was really struggling with this controller, pleaser, saboteur that I discovered much later in my Vistage journey. I also, early in my career, when I was rescuing my first company, I became a CEO at a really young age. I was 29 years old, and the guy that hired me in a turnaround got terminated because he was an idiot. The owners asked me if I wanted to run the company at 29. I said, oh, yeah, I can do that, right? So it was my first step into the leadership space of, I always had natural leadership, in my blood. And I saw this as a credible opportunity. I had no idea what I was doing, but I actually found a room of CEOs that help each other. Back then it was called Tech. Today it's called Vistage. And so I learned so much in that room of peers having private, confidential, vulnerable conversations that I just put in the back of my head that someday I might want to come back to this as a chair. So 4 decades later, I'm turning around companies and I'm fixing companies and trying to fix people and starting nonprofit organizations and volunteering too much and missing my children growing up because my wife Beth did remind me of that on numerous occasions. We made a life decision when we got married, which was a great one because she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom and raise our 2 children and take care of our house and me. And I wanted to be this crazy working guy, which I was. I got out of balance because what I realized during that journey is, life is kind of like I call it, my metaphor is a two-wheel bicycle. So, in life, you have, the way you make money, which is the back of the bicycle. That's the power that, energizes the bicycle to move forward. The front wheel is, your vision. It's it steers your life direction. And for many of us business folks, when we get caught up in the how important we think our job and our people and our companies are, the wheels get reversed. And so the engine is basically driving who you are, and your life vision takes a back seat. I see that in my business rooms for many CEOs who are backwards and upside down, and their life can end in all kinds of things, health problems, divorce, their business can fail or succeed. So for me, I was so fortunate to have Beth as my partner in life that guided me forward, and I ultimately learned that lesson. Came back to Vistage about 5 years ago. Actually, I'm celebrating my 5th anniversary as a Vistage Chair in this month. So I'm pleased to be speaking with you. What a journey this has been for me. I came into the Vistage room actually thinking I was a pretty smart guy, and I was going to help all these CEOs, and I was going to fix them, and I was going to rescue them, and I was
You're
going
the
to do all sorts of
rescuer.
things. And so I did that, tried that pretty hard for a long time. And earlier, a year ago, actually, I knew I needed to figure out my purpose. What is my purpose? And so the wonderful world of Vistage is just that so many incredible people I've met all around the world that I would never have met had it not been for the journey, including you, by the way, as one of my newest Vistage.
Well, and Bill, I know. So I feel like I have a number of things that I want to pull back and explore with you, even a little more if we have the time as we keep going. It's such a beautiful and articulate way that you took us through that journey, and I know where you're going now. And I think I know. I shouldn't say I know where you're going now. And I want to enter this conversation from the perspective of one of the things that you and I really connected about is the idea that everybody has their own definition of success. When I think about how each of us defines our enduring success, you started to share with me your journey and what your purpose is and where you're at right now. When we think about the enduring nature of what our purpose is?
Yes, absolutely. For me, as I look back on my life, it was, because my two saboteurs, this controller pleaser thing. So the pleaser is always needing recognition outside. And so I sought achievement, I sought recognition, I sought awards, I sought all kinds of things, right? Thinking they were satisfying me. I used to have them on my wall. I took them all down and put up some drapes because it's like nobody cares about your awards but you, right? Uh,
And
but the
I like your
reality
drapes.
is,
It makes the lighting look good in there too.
well, that's one of the main gifts from my wife, Beth, who loves to decorate. We moved into this home about 6 months ago, and this is the most enjoyable part of her journey is beautiful
Mm,
decorations, right? So,
yeah.
but anyways, so for me, it was seeking this purpose, and it really becomes your definition and your experience with the enduring success. So in the journey, I joined a group of chairs. We spent a year with a great coach, Suzanne Livingston, um, seeking what is our purpose. So for me, actually, I knew the love piece was it. I mean, I knew I didn't know what it was. What is this love piece? How does that fit into my purpose? But I did have the opportunity when I became a chair 5 years ago. One of the other journeys I was on was we were introduced to another coach, Shirzad Shameen, who wrote the book Positive Intelligence. And he was offering a grant and a training class for chairs. And this happened, actually, when I became a chair, it was in the middle of COVID.
Mm.
Shirzad actually wrote the book. It was a bestseller. It's a great book. He teaches a class at Stanford on the topic of positive intelligence. But we're all in the world of COVID. So he was a speaker, you're a speaker. There was nothing. So what he figured out was he developed a very robust app for a phone. And he saw the opportunity to really take positive intelligence to the world. And that was his purpose, clearly, is positive intelligence. So as a new chair, I saw the opportunity to take his course on positive intelligence. And I learned about my saboteurs. So everybody has the same saboteur, the judge. Unfortunately, people are more judgmental than others. But we're always judging either ourselves, we're judging others, we're judging circumstances. And the judge is when he gets amped up and gets excited by being triggered by things that cause us to be judgmental, we bring along what Shirzad calls accomplice saboteurs. And so he has a nice little 5-minute assessment that I know you've taken recently.
Yep.
And
Thank you for that. Right. And I did it. I
yes.
made sure. And you said, don't think too much about it. It takes about 5 minutes. And I did it while I was on a plane because I knew there wasn't, distractions and I had Wi-Fi, and I said, okay. And I'm going to try my hardest not to think too much when I'm answering this. So I'm sure because the judge is there, even in completing the assessment. All right,
Yes.
Put that aside. Keep going. We'll talk about me another time. Go on.
Right. And so for me, I took the assessment 5 minutes, and I figured out it, which was I knew, right? But we didn't. They're avatars, and they sound a little, not maybe corny, but So mine were controller, pleaser, restless, hyperachiever. There's 9 of them. I won't go through all of them, and it just for me it landed because I've been in a path of self growth, self discovery, lifelong learning. That's just the journey I'm on, and I'm super happy to be back to it with the Vistage space because I learn so much every day. It's just amazing. But I learned that about myself. What I actually learned in that exercise of the 6 weeks was in session 3. It's a 6-week program. We go into this deep introspective process of getting in touch with our 5-year-old self, which I had never done before because I left Billy back decades ago. And what Shazad teaches us is, we all still have that perfect little 5-year-old inside of us, that just wonderful human being that, is just untarnished by the life experiences that we've all gone through. But then as life goes on, we start to build layers of protection and life, and our parents, with all great intentions, teach us how we should behave and what we should do. And we have to do this and we have to. So we just grow up kind of losing touch with that perfect human being. But in that part of that journey, path to finding that perfect human being, I learned is self-love and self-compassion. This light went off for me. It's like self-love, self-compassion. What is that? I thought that was like narcissistic or egotistical or whatever. But I literally discovered in that course and in that program that it is, this is the journey to my purpose for sure. Because I needed to give myself a break, learn to care about myself, because pleasers try to find their love from others externally. You can spend a life doing that. I mean, I have a great partner who loves me pretty much unconditionally, Beth. But we have to work to earn it from the others, and for ourselves, we just have to just let go and just accept ourselves. So that was just this big aha moment. I stepped into the world of being a chair. I still have this rescuer thing. I call it a sandwich in between the pleaser and the controller. I kind of kid my members sometimes. I go, if I can't control you, I try to make you happy. So I feel like I'm a little bimodal, right?
Hmm.
But really, sandwich in between those two is a rescuer, trying to fix people. So this year in the journey with Suzanne and finding my greater purpose, which is now, this amazing word that I discovered, I learned it from you, but I hadn't met you yet, boundless love.
I feel like I need a drum roll.
You
And
do. It's like,
you had not connected with me. You had not watched my TEDx talk. And listen, I'm not the only person that says boundless love, but I don't think that it's very, it hasn't been popularized. And you had already gone on this journey with Suzanne, and you had already come up with, and I'm not even going to say it because you're going to say it. And then because somebody connected us, and they were like, hold on, you have the same philosophy. So you went on this journey, and then it manifested in.
yes. And so it manifested in, and it's been a little more than a year. And part of the exercise that Suzanne takes us through, and, she's done a lot of, she's studied, Stoicism and philosophers and Buddhism and all the, the ancient, we learn
Mhm.
almost everything from ancient cultures, right? I have several books that I love. And here's one of my daily books is this one here. Which I'll plug some of my favorite authors. The Daily
Great.
Stoic, right? Yeah, with Ryan Holiday. This is from Epictetus. I can't hardly pronounce these philosophers, right? And what he said, whenever that was, many years ago, is the only thing that we can control as human beings is how we choose to react to incoming messaging. We can't control others. I spent a lifetime trying to control others, being a controller fixer. So I learned, let go. So, and just, and love and allow this love journey to take hold. And what I realized in that journey was I started hearing this love thing come through me to other voices in the business world. And actually, one of them is this amazing CEO that a lot of people don't even remember because, life goes on and moves fast. Alan Mulally, you heard that name?
Tell me, remind me.
Alan Mulally was the CEO of Boeing and Ford Motor Company for 40 years at Boeing, and he turned around Ford in the mid 2000s. And his journey was centered around love. And he has a system he developed called the Working Together Management System, which he literally learned at his family table. And in the middle of it is the heart, love, and the word he uses for his people is love them up, love them up. And so their love pops into my head in the business space because I'd never really thought about, again, 5 years ago, I wouldn't be using the word love in business. It just didn't connect, right? It's just, and that popped up, and then it kept coming through in other messages to me along the journey. And then when I got into the room with Suzanne and we did this life mapping exercise and I connected these dots with my story that I told you earlier, I realized not only did I have this very complicated relationship with love, but it had been the common thread that really brought me, peace and harmony. And so I thought, well, why not in the business world? And then in one of the chair world great keynote speeches, I heard Marcus Buckingham, and his book's called Love Plus Work, right? And
Yep.
so there it was again. And he probably used the word love 2,000 times in his keynote, right? And so I kept bouncing up against love. And then I went into the room with Suzanne and the other leaders, and I did this deep work, and I realized that it's this self-love, this unconditional love. And so I kept exploring, the word, and I tried to come up with a more, global word. And then this boundless love thing popped in. But so there it was right in front of me, and I went deep. I decided that I'm in this next phase of my life, my next season of my life that really I'm sharing with you and the world is I've started an organization called the Boundless Love Leadership Collective. So I'm on this journey that I'm at the front gate of, and through I want to make sure I acknowledge a great human being, Ruth Ann Marley, who introduced you and I. She's
Yes.
my speaker coordinator. I love her. I love everybody, but I love Ruth Ann because she helps me meet people like you. I'm a low detail guy. I'm not a real good
Yeah,
research guy.
Ruth Ann and I hit it off, and she is a matchmaker. She
Absolutely.
knows how to make the right matches. And so I'm sure she was like, just her bells were ringing after she and I connected.
You're on my docket only because of Ruth Ann, because I probably would have never found you. And then she said, "Oh, this lady's amazing. You got to watch her TED Talks." Of course, I watched your TED Talk and immediately was blown away. But the title of it, I think, has boundless love in it, right?
It does. Yeah. The secret to create enduring success. Embrace boundless love. Yeah. And I went on a journey to encapsulate what I believe and know to be enduring success. And as I went on that journey, it screamed out to me that for me, and I believe anyone, we can create that complete, lasting, everlasting success when we do choose to, in every interaction we have with one another, to give all the love, all of it. Don't withhold. We have a choice in every interaction to either give all the love we have or withhold it. We have a choice to receive it all or resist it. What I appreciate about your Boundless Love collective and leadership and your philosophy is you also, I believe this, I just don't explore it to the extent that you do, very much self-love, self-compassion. Because how can we give it all to someone else if we haven't yet chosen to embrace it for ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's again part of that journey of Suzanne uses the term 40 bits, right? So it's like things come into us when we're ready to learn them.
Mm-hmm.
She uses the example of like when you buy a new red car or something, you've never seen this car before, and you're driving on the freeway and they're everywhere, right? So when the 40 bits of love opens up, all of a sudden, it keeps coming
It's everywhere.
back.
It's everywhere. Right.
Even sometimes if you don't want it, it's there because your mindfulness is opened up to it. So yeah, for me, I realize that it's the self-love piece, the self-compassion piece. So I've listened to so many podcasts and read books and things like that. But the other one that was powerful for me, and this is a part of the journey, is another Vistage, which is amazing events. It's once a year. We bring together about 1,000 chairs from about 30 countries. It's just amazing. And they'll always have training sessions for the chairs. So one of the training sessions, the one I went to is called The Magic of Surrender. It's actually a book, and I'll send you these book titles. So this is
great.
Coot Blackson is the author, and I love the subline is finding the courage to let go, right? And so I sat in this thing, and it just was amazing to me because that letting go is a lot about ego, but it's also about control, right? And I went to the training session about 2 years ago, read the book, really enjoyed it. I was having a hard time, really letting go of this control to just live in this just presence of love, because I felt like I needed to control, but love is you can't control with love. You just give it, right, with no expectation of receiving. So this book was calling me, and it was on my shelf, so I picked it back up. So in chapter 6, the title of the chapter is "The Ultimate Letting Go is Love." And so there it is, back again, the circle, right? And let's just read one of these quotes because it's so profound.
Yeah.
So love is a choice, an inner moment by moment decision, a gift that we can give to anyone at any time. And what I see in the room with my leaders is, the two primal emotions we have as human beings is love, and the other one is fear. And most CEOs live so much in fear, and it's all the fears, failure, not having enough, all the kind of things, being beat by the competition and stuff. And what I see is that, if one, fear is really draining. It takes a lot of energy. It's a very negative place. In Shrazad's world, that's what basically fuels the saboteurs is fear. And for him, love is what he calls the sage. So now I'm learning in my space, and I ultimately became a coach in the world of positive intelligence because I would love to give that gift to people when they're ready. The other thing I realize is I can't fix them. They have to come to me and seek, the opportunity to learn. And when they do, I offer this gift to them. So that for me is the path that I'm on today. I wouldn't, like I said, I'm meeting the people I need to meet now because I do really believe in serendipity. And that's another thing is, you can't control serendipity, right?
You can't. And I want to explore a little bit more with what you were saying is you can't make the choice for anyone else. Before I chose to inspire people through my inspirational focus, I really had to deconstruct how the heck did I get from the pit to the peak? What the heck did I actually do? And so I spent a lot of time deconstructing. Well, one thing that I didn't have to think about, I knew I made a first choice. So in order for me to go from there to here, it had to start with making a first choice. Now, at the time, my first choice was to pick up the phone when my sister called. I've since made other first choices. Success begins with making a first choice. When you reflect on your journey to embracing boundless love, what is a first choice that you've made that you know supports your purpose?
Well, for me, actually, it became simple when I took time to reflect. But connecting the dots of our life isn't easy. So I would, for all of us who are the human beings we are, I would invite you to do that journey of, life mapping and connecting your dots. And so it was through the work I've done in the last year that I actually realized the first choice that was the most foundational to my life, especially my enduring success life, was choosing my wife Beth to marry me. Actually, it was a mutual agreement, right? It was a two-way
Yes.
agreement.
Right.
And that was for me just 47 years later. I mean, we're still together. We love each other. We just spent the weekend together. We're like our best friends. We're just and we have our challenges. Life has challenges, but we face them together, and we always know we have each other's back. And we also love each other unconditionally. Sometimes, Beth was better at this than I was because she already knew all this stuff. I had to learn it, right? Because her superpower is, compassion and nurturing, and just care for other human beings, which is, I get the gift of each day having, a dose of that, from Beth. Sometimes laced with some, firm, um, affirmations for me, right? But also I learned in my process of love and even my pleaser thing. I used to, you know, if Beth would be upset, I thought I had to fix something. Well, what I learned in my journey is all I had to do was listen. I just had to listen and not. I mean, so I would get him. She's upset about something, expressing it. I'm going to jump in and fix her. She doesn't want fixing. She wants me to listen. And then I learned now that I just listen, and then the wait lifts for her, and I feel great because I've listened. And if when I tried to fix it, it would make it worse.
And the thing that I appreciate so much about spending this time with you is we come into the conversation together with a shared philosophy and purpose around embracing boundless love. So I can take this interview any way I want, versus needing to go through a process before we get there. So I just want to go straight to, and we might back up. Don't think that I'm not going to ask you more questions, but we might back up. But I want to go straight to my fifth choice, as I said, was to embrace boundless love. That is the most important choice ever. If I had just chosen earlier to give love and to receive it, I would have naturally have committed to two-way agreements. I do want to explore two-way agreements with you, but I would have naturally committed to two-way agreements. I would have naturally demonstrated the behaviors that build trust. I would have naturally created community. Those are the choices that I made that got me to the fifth choice. What audiences big and small and groups across all industries, sometimes they'll say, well, Trish, how does giving love show up? And I'll say, you tell me how it shows up. Like when you think about your lives, and the reason I'm going straight to there is because I was thinking about Beth and Beth listening. To me, one of the most simple yet hard and critical manifestations of love, the verb, is truly listening to someone, not trying to fix it, putting your self orientation away and truly listening. So I just want to, especially with the time that I have with you, I want to explore this with how does giving love, the verb, the action, how does that show up in your life? That could be from Beth. It could be from you. It could be what you see with the CEOs in your groups. Just give me some of the examples of giving love, the verb.
Well, so what for me again, I spend my life today, in addition to obviously my family and my loving wife and our home, is serving my members. So I now have, as of this week, actually, I'll have 5 Vistage groups. I'm just launching my newest group, Trusted Advisors. which, being a goal guy, when I became a Vistage Chair, I set a goal for myself, 5 groups in 5 years. I'm getting to the end of the 5th year, so of course I got to make my goal. So, but not just because of that, it's because I come to realize that I have the opportunity to touch people's lives in a way that I never imagined. And I can do it, so powerfully in the Vistage rooms, because one of the things that we learn and we teach, and one of the conditions to be a Vistage member, is trust. And so trust is the foundation of all, strong relationships, and a bunch of business owners coming together to help each other. Well, they have to have trust, because in order to have trust, they need psychological safety, which then allows them to become vulnerable and open up. But for me, it's really modeling so much of what I would love to see from them. As I now realize in my 5th year, it's not fixing, it's standing by their side, not even being their guide, just being there to listen to them. Because we do these one-to-one coaching sessions with the members, and it's taken me a long time, and I'm still learning, by the way. The less I talk, the more I learn. I'm not there to teach them. I'm there they'll teach themselves. They have the wisdom inside, but they have their walls up, right? So again, your story is so powerful, and what I loved about your story was you had the most odds against you that most humans have, and you made the choice to pick up the phone. But the other thing that I've learned in my journey is that it's like every challenge that we come across in life, it's a gift and opportunity to learn something about ourselves, learn something from others, as opposed to so many times, and bad things happen, and bad things happen to you, and bad things happen to people. And it's hard to see when those things happen that there's a gift and opportunity inside, but you found it, and you're living it, right? So I mean,
Thank you.
it's just, to me, it brings tears to my eyes to realize that you survived, and you strived, and you overcame what most people cannot overcome. So sometimes when I tell my story, I feel like, well, this is crazy, this love thing. But then I realize my story is powerful too, because it's my story, right?
Yeah. And you know what? So now I'm like going off the track here with you. So I do a ton of thinking around this and reading around this, which is, of course, we live in a comparison world. We know that. Everybody knows that. You don't need to read about it to know that. It's comparison. Well, now what has happened over the last number of years is there seems to be a comparison on life experiences.
Right.
And that comparison can be, well, mine isn't as bad as yours, right? That's a comparison. And then there could be the comparison of yours wasn't mine. And that's not good, right? And exactly what you are saying, and what inspires me so much to bring more voices to more people is, and even just the way that you said, the universal behavior of love and fear. It does not matter who you are. It does not matter what experiences you've had. It does not matter where you come from. Those
Right.
two things exist within all of us. And I know that every single person has experienced in their life love, giving it, not giving it, love, receiving it, not receiving it. We've all experienced this. And so I hope through more of this that we can get more people to move away from comparing experiences.
It is a good tangent, and I'm glad you brought it up, because even when I said the words, it became a comparison, which is like, and part of it is, one of our trainers, because we have so many wonderful trainers, including yourself. Welcome to the world of business speaking. Um, she basically, she's a marketing trainer, and she said, business is built on creating envy, right? It's like, the Apple iPhone, which I have one. Is this the best iPhone? No, it is not the best. It's not the best phone, right? It's not even an iPhone. But Apple has done a phenomenal job at creating the envy of, I need to have an Apple iPhone, not the other brands, right? So that's and we are bombarded with all the media, all the news, everything about this envy piece, right? And so
Right?
I think that's part of it, is always this comparison space. But it's really just letting go of that, which it is rewiring your brain, which is what I love about the positive intelligence work, because I've learned to do these things called PQ reps every day, which is rubbing your fingertips or taking breaths or wiggling your toes, and it's just this moment of mindfulness where we reset, because our brains are like the monkey brain. We have these 70,000 thoughts a day, and most of them are not good, right? Most of them are negative. How do we stay in the positive? So it's a continual practice throughout the day, So, I think the verb part of it is just acting and realizing that, each action you take, each thought you have, can connect you to the positive or can connect you to the negative. And if you want to go negative, just watch news for about 15
Oh my
minutes.
gosh. I mean, just pick up your phone. I'm like turning everything off on my phone, if I have Google or even
Right.
Microsoft Edge, because news reports come in. I'm like, stop. I don't want to look. If I want to look, I will on my own go look. All right, hold on though. You said something about positive intelligence with recognizing, almost like the tactile, I'm not saying it right.
Yeah. So it's
To recognize
basically,
what's going on.
yeah, you're slowing down, the thoughts too. And so he calls it mental fitness, and it's true because every thought that we get as a human being comes into the brainstem, which is the emotional part of our brain. So in order to be a rational, because emotion is not sometimes not always rational, it has to get up to the frontal brain, the prefrontal cortex. It's a long journey through. Um, and when you're triggered by these emotional things that are negative, many people go into the spiral of negativity. I mean, you and I, we all know people who can go for days in this funk, right? So that's why Shazad teaches to do these exercises that actually, the cool thing about the brain is it's. I tell people it's the scariest place on earth, the gray matter in between our ears, because we really know very little about the brain. We've learned a lot, but just one of the things we've learned in the last 50 years is a thing called neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity, the brain is made up of two things. It's electrical and plumbing. It's a bunch of gray matter, but it's electrical and plumbing, right? So you have the blood flow, and then but it's the electrical circuits that make the brain function. So, through this process of mindfulness, we can improve the pathways from the emotional brain to the rational brain that allow us to go from this dirt highway to a dirt road to a superhighway almost, right? So we can learn when we get triggered. He teaches these powers, right? So to shift into the sage brain, which he called it is love, you want to empathize, you want to be creative, you want to he gives you specific techniques for how you get there. But the first is to look at each bad thing as a gift and opportunity. And so here's an example for me. So a couple of years ago, my youngest daughter, who has two children, was in a very difficult marriage that was not meant to be. She made the wrong choice. Her first choice was not the best one, but I too made the wrong first choice. So she came in for vacation to our house, and she asked my wife and I if her and her sons could move into our house. And all of a sudden, in the moment, I immediately had learned through the training this is a difficult circumstance for her. What is the gift and opportunity? And what I realized, it just came to me so quickly, was that, we actually had bought this really big house about 20 years ago I have no idea why. I was a home builder and I thought you needed a big house. So I had this big house that Beth and I lived in. And all of a sudden, oh my goodness, this is why we bought this big house, because we have room for a family that needs love and unconditional love at a time of need. And it was like, boom, it was just like, it was a gift, as opposed to, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, what did I do wrong as a parent to cause my daughter to marry the wrong guy and have the da da da. And it's like, no, that's controlling stuff, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Self-oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
It's just a great reframe. And you can do it immediately in the
Yep.
moment. Reframe
Yeah.
to
And
gift.
I realize that the more difficult the circumstances,
Hmm.
and you lose a child. All the horrible things
Of
that happen in life.
course. Of course. Right.
There's something in there. There's some reason, right? That that things happen to us in life. We don't know what they are, but if we realize that they're not, poor me. This is happening to me, right? This is life. This is how am I dealing with life? And so I'll go
Yeah.
back to your example. You made a choice, and what an amazing choice you made. I realized you had someone standing beside you to help make that choice. Right?
Yep. And then other choices, right? I mean, life is about choices and recognizing, and maybe that is the power that I hope others realize that they have, is the power to recognize and observe and be aware in the moment of the choices that are in front of you. And then of course to act on the choice that's going to move you forward. And I would say act on the choice to give love, act on the choice to see this as a gift, act on the choice of what can I do to give and to receive the love in the moment. So Bill, you said when we were exploring giving and receiving love. Example is serving your members, serving the leaders that are a part of your Vistage groups. And then you use the word modeling. You're not going to fix it. You're going to model. You're going to model things. Are there examples that you can share that are examples of modeling, things that you model, which we've been talking about listening. I totally, yeah. So keep going.
So, what I've learned, well, I always realized like vulnerability is really hard for people, especially obviously in a group, right? But in the setting of this room, which is a private peer group of business owners who are not competing, if they want to grow, they need to get vulnerable. Well, most of us human beings want to stay cerebral, especially business folks, knowledge workers. And I learned this in one of my trainings in the last 5 years. And I love this metaphor is that our bodies are a taxi cab for our brain, right? Well, it would be great if we could all stay in that space. But the reality is, if we want to grow as human beings, we have to get out of our head and we have to get into our heart and our gut. And it's incredibly hard for all of us to do, especially folks that like to be cerebral and like to be intellectual. But you just won't grow, in the depth of what we need to grow in that self-love piece, in that unconditional love for others and self-compassion, unless you do that. So what I have learned is if I model behavior, so if I model vulnerability in my rooms, that will help create that psychological safety and it opens people up.
That's great. And in your modeling, you also brought up trust, trust is the foundation of any meaningful, enduring relationship. We cannot create enduring success if we do not have enduring relationships. And building trust is one of the deliberate choices that I made on my journey. It was deliberate, it was conscious, it was pragmatic, and it was behavior based when I think about building trust. I just want to explore this with you a little bit. How does someone earn your trust?
That's a great question. And that answer would be different in different decades of my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm at, people are, we're trusting or not trusting. A lot of that comes from our early life, upbringing, right? When you have a difficult upbringing, it's hard to trust anybody because, of that. But I've been more on the trusting side in my early life. So I had this sort of attitude of I would trust people till they taught me I shouldn't. I got burned a lot in life, especially in business, because one of the things I realized in business, we're not playing on a level playing field. There are those of us who are honest and those of us are not as honest, right? So then, I became a little skeptical later on. But what I realized is that if I want people to trust me, I actually have to trust myself. So that really takes me back to, this journey with me forgiving my mother. I mean, that was an agreement with myself, is to, let love, let go and accept the fact that she loved me unconditional. She did conditionally. She did the best job she knew how. She probably doesn't even remember saying the things she said. And I'm all, wrapped in this bundle of, I'm going to use my love as so. So I think if I, open up to people in this vulnerable way and show love, it'll model behavior. So I wrote a quote on it. I did want to share this. So trust is the soul recognizing itself in others. So it begins when we stop managing love and we start living it. So these are these affirmations I've put together for myself. So I have these daily reminders every day because I forget, right? I get by 10 o'clock. I'm like all amped up because I have this adrenaline rich system and I'm like just going and blowing. But the reality is slow down, do your PQ reps, take a deep breath, reset. And then when we're triggered, because those triggers always create the emotional response. I've actually learned in the last 5 years, I could get pretty nasty in the room sometimes when I really got triggered. And that didn't serve anybody. But that was my saboteurs in action, right? So now I've learned, not respond immediately, especially when we're upset. One of the resets, like the PQ tactile, is just take those 5 deep breaths. And if you're really, really upset, and I just had a conversation with one of my members, he needed to let go of a 30-year employee. I mean, what a terrible thing. And he got wrapped up in that person's personal life. And that's one of the hardest things we do as an employer. Sometimes there's a mismatch in that relationship. But I told him, it was so distressful. I said, if you get upset enough, do not engage, in an argument. If you get so upset, get up and leave. Go to the bathroom. Because if you get out of that, and we've all been in that, your whole body changes. Your heart starts beating. Sometimes it's as easy as changing your posture or taking a few deep breaths. But I've learned, through this journey is the Socratic process of, again, get out of the brain, get into the heart, get into the gut. What's it telling you? Model that behavior. I'm still learning, but
Yeah.
so.
It's awesome. And it goes so much back to modeling. Recognize what's happening, recognize you've got a choice. And I think as leaders, I'm going to say our job to inspire others and to model for others what trust looks like, what boundless love looks like, two-way agreement. So I want to get your perspective here. So you just said a minute ago, that you made an agreement with yourself to forgive your mom. I just think, just first off, before we even move forward from that, I think that's beautiful and it's powerful and it's a testament that the choice is within you. It's the question that I get the most is, did you forgive your dad? And how did you? And your experience is similar to mine, meaning the forgiveness, meaning choice, and that happens within us. So I just wanted to pause there for a minute because I think that's pretty powerful. The gift forgiveness.
Yes, yeah, no, it really is, and thank you. It's something that's just critically important, but which is probably why I'm so deep on this boundless love journey right now, because I've got a long ways to go, right, for myself and for others. But as I learn how to love myself better and to give myself that compassion, Christine Neff teaches, fierce compassion, self-compassion. Right? It's like, and so that's part of my journey. Is just like, all these folks to teach me keep popping up. They just end up in my feed somewhere because I'm supposed to learn that.
Exactly. That way, right? Well, Bill, one of the critical choices I made on my journey was to commit to what I call a two-way agreement. And that was between me and my sister and her husband. Now, since then, and that was when I was 20, 21. So very a long time ago. But I've since made other two-way agreements. Oh my gosh, we could spend so much time here. We're not. I just want to touch on this a minute. When I think about two-way agreements, they are when we are entering into an agreement with someone. I think about Vistage all the time in this category because you all have an agreement amongst each other. Your members have an agreement amongst each other. But these are agreements that we enter into with someone else or a group of someone else's. And often those agreements are predicated on the desire for something to be successful or the desire for someone, for someone to be successful. And the desired outcome requires actions on both parts. Give me your perspective on two-way agreements. And then if there's one that you would share that you've committed to.
Well, my perspective is I think they're vital to two human beings connecting and having a relationship, and they can be simple. Like they could be in the moment of you walk into your favorite coffee place to get your coffee, and you could look at the person across the counter and see them as a person taking your money and giving you your coffee, or you could look at them as a human being. And in the moment, you can create a two-way agreement of acknowledging them. I always look at their name tag. I greet them by their name. I've learned to ask them how they're doing. And what's amazing is, depending on where they're at, right? Because it's a two-way agreement. Most of the time, they get lit up. They feel connected. You smile at them, and you've just in the instant created a two-way agreement to treat each other as just a lift up as better human beings. So I'm learning that. I do it a lot better. I got in this weekend where the hotel got in the elevator. Say good morning to the person in the elevator. Ask them how they're doing. Boom, two-way agreement. I mean, some people don't. That's when I walk on the bike trail with their dogs every day. I say hello or good morning to everybody comes by. Some people are just happy and respond. Some people don't respond, right? And I'm not judging them anymore. Like, what's wrong with that person? It's like, hey, So the example of two-way agreement for me was, as I mentioned, when my daughters were growing up, Beth was taking care of the girls. I was missing my kids growing up, and she reminded me of that. My oldest daughter, when she got divorced when my grandson Parker was 2.5, I realized she had a challenge and a struggle ahead of her as a single mom. And I also look back and realize, hey, I missed so much of the kids growing up. So Parker, my grandson, he's getting ready to go to preschool. And so made an agreement. It was a 3-way agreement, actually, probably 4 ways
Yeah.
with Beth and
But Beth
Holly.
too. Yep.
Yeah, with Beth too, and Parker. And I said, I'm going to take Parker to school every day if I can. I'm going to be, and so we all agreed, and that became. I didn't even look at his job. I looked at it as gift and opportunity, right, to be part of somebody's life in a meaningful way. So for 10 years, I drove Parker to school almost every day, from the time he was 5 till the time he was like 13, right, 12. And what a journey it was, and what a gift it was, because those 15 minutes in the morning in that car with my grandson, watching him grow up and to this young man, this intelligent guy, this independent thinker. And we had this fun thing for the last 5 years we drove together. Yeah, we would play a song, "Oh What a Beautiful Morning." It came, and I love the James Taylor version, right? So Parker and I I'd play that song. Sometimes he was in a bad mood. I'd just put the song on, right? And so we'd listen to the song, and all of a sudden the music lightens you up. And so today that's, Parker and my favorite song. So he's now off to high school. He's living with his father. So I don't get to do that as often. And I told Parker when that journey ended, I go, Parker, I'm gonna miss his 15 minutes of my day more than anything else. And he really has, not for my credit, for his credit, he's growing into an incredible human being. But I really feel like Beth and I, and even Holly, had the opportunity to show unconditional love to Parker and deep love for another human. I got a lot of hope for that guy.
That's wonderful, and a great example of an experience that I bet like you and Parker, and probably especially Parker because he was so little, didn't even know going into it what the journey and the experience would end up being, and the connection that you two have. And I think that's just really special. 15 minutes in the car, no interruptions. It's a commitment. Nothing got in the way, because lots of things could have gotten in the way. Beth could have driven him.
Yeah, well, and also I wouldn't let him do the shiny object thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
early on, before he could really have a conversation, but then I realized, wait a second, I'm missing, even when he's 3 or 4, there's an opportunity to, there's
Yes.
something in there that he could share, right? So we
Yes.
didn't do
Yes.
shiny objects, and had a conversation. Sometimes it was silence.
And that is awesome too. Just allow the silence to happen, which I also think is an example of giving love. Because so often there's so much noise and everything going on in our lives, anyways. Just be in the same spot, as you said, even when you were talking about your members, be by their side, be by Parker's side. So each of the choices and everything we've been talking about are examples in my mind of embracing love. I do want to make a distinction. I'm going to speak for Bill and I together for everybody listening. There's giving love, and then there's boundless love. There's a reason that word boundless is connected to our purpose. I have learned that love begets love. I've learned that there is no cap. There's no limit to our ability to give it and our ability to receive it, no matter what the experience is. The choice of giving is a great choice. And Bill and I hope, that the choice can extend to give it all. Boundless. Boundless. That is a powerful word.
It really is one of the, again, love journeys in the last 5 years, because I went on this journey. I was with some chairs, and we were having a little triad meeting together. And I told the other chairs about my self-love journey, right? And he made a quote, told me a quote. And the quote is, self-love is the pebble on the pond of world peace. And it's like, I didn't even understand what he was saying at the time, right? So it just kept coming back to me, and I kept reflecting on that. And then, it goes back to some Buddha teaching, and it's amazing because, in the work we do in our collective group of chairs is the ripples, right? So how do we ripple? In the world peace, I mean, that's a big global idea, but it really starts with self-love, because, if you don't have self-love, loving others is kind of hypocrisy, right? It's like, Most of us, like, we wouldn't treat our best friend the way we treat ourselves, especially with the internal dialogue of negative thoughts and conversations. So yeah, it really is the boundless love for me. I just love the word. I think it's amazing. It's global. And it doesn't have any, there's no limitations to what you are doing. And now I'm going to join your journey, and we're going to find a collective of leaders
Yes.
that actually want. The little tagline I've come up with in my business space is to let love lead.
Yeah, let love lead. And Bill Niemi, I'm going to ask you one more question before we sign off. But Bill Niemi, the founder of the Boundless Love Leadership Collective. I think that's a movement. I think it will be a movement, and I'm appreciative to be on the journey with you. You mentioned that you shared your personal essay, The Philosopher of Love. You also shared that with me, and I had a chance to read it. Can we end today with you just sharing your aha moment as it relates to rock bands and philosophers?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'm going to read it because
Yep.
I don't want to miss the words.
Yep.
And how this came to me was because the thoughts are now connecting. So I woke up one morning and I had this, the Steve Miller song, The Joker, in my head, but I couldn't even remember the lyrics, right? It's like, but I kept thinking of the pompous of love thing, right? And so then I read daily Stoic readings, and in the reading that morning came up, with this teaching from Musonius Rufus, and in that he talks about the daily practice of philosophy. So there's a story in Steve Miller's 1973 classic song, The Joker, that has always stuck with me. I am the pompous of love. So for decades, no one really knew what that word meant. Pompous actually is more of a invention than it is a definition. But maybe that's the point. Sometimes love is beyond language. It has to be felt, lived, and embodied. The lyric came back to me recently as I reflected on the teachings of Musonius Rufus, known as the Roman Stoic philosopher, and he was called the Socratic farmer. His wisdom was simple, earthy, and uncompromising. Practice trumps theory. Philosophy is not an idea, but a daily workout. Virtue transcends circumstance. Simplicity is wisdom, and virtue is universal. Suddenly, those two voices, Steve Miller's playful lyric and Musonius Rufus' grounded philosophy, merged into a new title for Bill Niemi, The Philosopher of Love. Because love, like philosophy, is not a theory, it's a practice. It is not abstract, it is embodied. It is not reserved for scholars or saints, it belongs to everyone. Boundless love, at its core, is a living philosophy. It's both playful and profound. Like a song lyric, it makes you smile, it disarms you, and it opens your heart. Like a Stoic teaching, it calls you back to discipline, to simplicity, and to daily practice. As the philosopher of love, I see my life as a daily workout in self-love, authenticity, and compassion. Some days the practice feels light and joyful, like singing along to a rock music classic. Other days it's gritty and demanding, requiring the strength to forgive and the courage to lead with vulnerability and the humility to begin again. But always the practice is worth it, because love, when lived, is the highest wisdom. And perhaps that's the real meaning of pompous after all. Not a word to be defined by a way of being to be practiced. A playful mystery, a daily discipline, and a boundless invitation.
Bill Niemi, thank you so much. Thank you for choosing to be a part of my journey. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey. Everybody, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Choose and Become interview series with Bill Niemi. Bill, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun, more than I expected.
That's awesome. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Choose and Become interview series. To check out more episodes, go to www.trishkendallspeaks/podcast, or go to any of your favorite podcast channels, including YouTube, under Trish Kendall Speaks, and you'll find this interview and more. choose and become.